Good morning. Thank you for joining Hashtag No Limits. I am your host, Shelly Kino. Hashtag No Limits is about people who society has placed limits upon, but who have busted through those limits. And I believe that there is a great example in the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. And also, Ophelia says in Hamlet that we know who we are, but not who we will be. And I believe both of those things 100%. The caterpillar literally dissolves into its cells and then reforms into the butterfly and then has to struggle to get out of that cocoon in order for its wings to be strong enough to fly. While none of that is an easy task, neither is busting through those limits that society places upon a person. Today, my guest, I feel like I'm really short. Today, my guest has helped hundreds, probably thousands of people bust through limits, but she herself has busted through some limits, and she is going to share all of that with us today. My guest today, many of you would know her as Mrs. D's from Mrs. D's Corner, but I get to know her as my friend Stephanie Delussey. Stephanie, thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm a little chilly in Southern Illinois today. The temperature's a little cool, but you're in Florida. You look warm.
It is probably going to be about 90 degrees today in the Gulf Coast of Florida. It's beautiful and sunny. It is summer here officially.
Well, that's good. Our weather is confused. It wants to think it's still fall somehow. We've skipped over all the seasons and gone straight to fall. I'm not sure what's going on, but it'll get there. That we always say that our weather here in Southern Illinois, if you don't like it, wait 5 minutes and it'll be something different.
Yeah, we've had that. We had the first. So if you look at the hurricane tracker, we had our first yellow dot on the map this week, which is just a storm rolling through. So yellow it can turn into something. But it was too close to land, so we're good. But we had our first.
Yeah, we have tornado season, and I don't really know which is better or worse.
I think I would rather have hurricane season because for the most part, at least you get notice.
Yeah.
With tornadoes, you're like, oh, there's a funnel. It's coming. We better go. You don't have much notice for that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we get some, but not days worth of notice like you get for a hurricane. Yeah. So, well, enough about the weather. So what did I mean when I say you've helped hundreds, if not thousands of people bust through limits? What is your day job?
Yeah, so I don't like the word former, but I'm a former traditional classroom special education teacher. I left the traditional classroom setting about 5 years ago due to my severe anxiety, and I decided to take care of me, which a lot of teachers are doing right now. And I am all for that. Do what makes you happy and do what's best for you, because I wholeheartedly believe you can't help the students. You can't help other teachers. You can't help families if you can't help yourself first. You can't pour from an empty cup is 100% true. But I also, when I was in the traditional classroom, I started Mrs. D's Corner, which is where I share resources and teaching tips. And I've taught everything from resource classroom inclusion. I've co-taught, I've done self-contained. I've worked in public schools, charter schools, suburban, urban settings, many different states. And I also have the intentional IEP, where I help teachers learn how to write better IEPs.
That's awesome. And within the intentional IEP, you have your summer PD series going on right now. Is that correct?
Correct. It started yesterday. We kicked things off. So we do that every summer, and nothing is live like this. So it's all pre-recorded. You show up whenever you want to watch the trainings. And there are 30 trainings this summer. When you sign up for this summer, you also get access to last summer, which is 29 trainings. So you get about 60 trainings, which is we give out the certificate of completion. So if you do both of them, you get about 20 hours of a certificate of completion, which is just pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I get to be part of it this year. Yes. You and I recorded a couple of sessions. So any of the teachers that are watching, I will put the link down below when this is over. Unfortunately, my affiliate link isn't working correctly.
I'm looking into it. Don't post it until I send you the correct one.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can still post the link to the PD series. I won't get credit for it, which will be fine. But
I'll take a look at it after this. I got you.
Okay. So let's talk about that severe anxiety. That is something that you and I have. We have so many things in common. This is one that's not one of our happiest things to have in common, though.
It's, when a lot of people think about having a mental illness, whether that's depression, anxiety, or anything else, it is seen as a detriment, or it is seen as a deficit. And there are definitely days where I'm like, man, I wish I could just give my anxiety back. I spent a lot of time in that mental state after I left the traditional classroom. I was like, why was this given to me? I didn't ask for this. I don't want it. I just want to give it back. Like, I am good. Just leave me alone. A voice inside of my head. Thankfully, right now, after years and years of therapy and just my supportive husband and family, I'm in a good place. I still deal with like little day-to-day anxieties. Like this morning I had to go get blood drawn and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to pass out. Like the girl was like, you're good. You're going to be fine. And I didn't pass out. I was like, look, my anxiety makes me feel like I'm going to, I'm just warning you, but I was good. So I still deal with the day-to-day anxieties, but the overarching big anxieties that I was dealing with, I have a pretty good hold on it now. So some days it's a detriment, it's a deficit for me. Other days I'm like, it's made me who I am. I like who I am and we're good, but I still would love to give it back. Like it's not it's not something I would wish upon anyone.
No, absolutely not. And it is, it's something more than just being a little nervous about something. It's something more than, oh, I just don't want to do that, because it makes me uncomfortable. It can physically stop you.
Yeah.
Have you ever had I call those panic attacks or anxiety attacks. Have you ever had those? And if you don't want to share,
I'm open.
Exactly what brought you out of teaching? Like, I know you said it was your severe anxiety, but what were the symptoms that you were having?
So I was teaching in a self-contained classroom, and looking back, I can see how I had anxiety before being diagnosed with it. But the school that I was in, it turned very toxic that year that I was there. And I believe it came from advocating for my students. I had a student the previous year whose LRE was not my classroom. And I fought very hard and had the data to back that up. And then the next school year I came back and it wasn't a good fit for me anymore to be there, but I was there for the kids. And I had my first panic attack ever in my classroom. And that's when I was like, I'm done. Like this is supposed to be my safe space. This is what I love. This is who I am. Like, this is not supposed to be like this. So I think it was either the next day or the next day after that, I gave my school 2 months notice. That's a whole other conversation that we could have, but I gave them 2 months notice. And I think that first night that I came home after my panic attack, like I came home, I remember sitting on the couch at like 4:30. And I did not wake up until 6:30 the next morning. Like it was, and I just went and did it again. The next day I just went to work. But I ended up going out on FMLA 3 months later. And then the rest is kind of history with just leaving the classroom.
Yeah. So do you mind sharing when you say you had your first panic attack?
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about panic attacks. Do you mind sharing, like what you experienced, kind of what was going through your head, what your body was doing?
Yeah. So in my experience, my anxiety attack might look very different from yours or might look very different from everyone else's. There's so many different things that kind of contribute to when you're having an anxiety attack or a panic attack. It's very different than just the what do they call it? Decision fatigue. It's very different from that. For me, what that looks like is my brain is racing. It is just bam, 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 like thought after thought after thought. I also have a lot of stomach things that kind of go on and get very, very nauseous, which is no fun. When I had my panic attack in my classroom, I was hyperventilating to the point where I couldn't really breathe. I was just crying like a hot mess. And I just remember my drive at that time was 45 minutes to get home. And I don't remember any of that drive home. So I went home and just kind of passed out after that and woke up the next morning. But it looks very different. Sometimes I'll sweat. Sometimes I don't. I do get anxiety hives, which I call them. I don't know if there's like an actual doctor term for them, but I call them anxiety hives. I don't have them right now, which yay, but usually I'll get them on my chest and my shoulders. I would get them in IEP meetings all the time whenever my nervous system was just kind of in overdrive. They look just like a little rash, but they're like little bumps and they get really itchy and hot. So sometimes I get super hot. So I'll get hot and cold flashes. It really depends on how like much it wants to come at me.
Yeah. Yeah. And for my experience, it's some of those symptoms are the same. My mind just, it locks on one thought.
Yeah.
The few panic attacks that I've had is, like basically impending doom.
Yeah.
That I'm something very bad is going to happen, and I can be in the most safe environment possible, and one of these will hit me. And then I'm just like, okay, I'm going to die. And I have to figure out, okay, you're okay. And I have to do a lot of self-talk is one of the solutions for myself. But I also take medicine daily to keep them, at a pretty calm level. I've had anxiety actually my whole life, but growing up, there wasn't such a thing.
Right.
And so my mom, God bless her and love her, took me to after doctor's appointment to the same doctor often going, okay, she's sick again. What's wrong?
Yeah.
There's something wrong. Because at that time I physically had a lot of stomach issues, what you talked about. But I wasn't necessarily throwing up. I just felt miserable. And so, they actually did exploratory surgery when I was a junior in high school, thinking, well, maybe there's something in her stomach that we're just not seeing. They took my appendix out because they were like, well, it's slightly misshapen, but I don't really think this is it, but we're just going to take this out.
Wow.
Because they really they didn't know. And it's only been, probably the last 20 years or so that anxiety has become a thing with like, these are the symptoms, these are the characteristics.
Yeah.
But 50 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was growing up and I was having all these different, and I probably did have anxiety attacks, just small ones.
Yeah.
Not like the really big ones I have had as an adult. I got stuck in the back of my vehicle. I had a vehicle that had a grate between the back seat. It was an Xterra.
Yeah.
And so a grate between the back seat and the front seat, and then the door, the hatch closed. And I wasn't literally stuck, but I did think I was.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest one that I had. And that was probably 15 or 16 years ago, but I've had smaller ones.
Yeah.
And it's very scary.
Yeah.
Because you do have to, again, like years of therapy, lots of strategies, lots of different things to try. And, they hit when they hit.
Yeah.
But for the rest of the time, I look at your stuff, and I know that, that's not every minute of your day, but you do post some of your down moments. But for the most part, you and I, we're both pretty happy people. We live very successful lives. We're productive. So anxiety isn't something that has to stop a person, but there are some whose anxiety is much more severe than mine, that it does. Yeah. Literally, there's much more intensive therapies that have to happen.
Yeah, I will say that, it's 2022. So maybe this was it was not this past January, the January prior. So 2021, I had some things happen in my life and I was in bed for 2 weeks, like straight, and it was almost like a depression. And I don't have clinically diagnosed depression, but I couldn't get out of bed. The most that I could do was get up in the morning and shower and maybe eat a bowl of soup. Like that was all that I could do for about 2 weeks. I even went to the emergency room because I don't take medication for my anxiety, but I had called my primary doctor and she's like, well, we can't get you in. I was like, I just need a Xanax, like just give me a Xanax and I will feel so much better. Like my heart was just racing all day. I couldn't eat anything. And she was like, sorry, I can't bring you in. So I tried doing like one of those online doctors, and they're like, well, I can't really give you that. And I'm like, somebody just give me a freaking Xanax. Like that's all that I need.
Right.
So I ended up going to the emergency room, and this was like in the height of COVID. And I was back in the room all by myself because my husband couldn't come with me. And all they gave me was a bag of fluid. And she's like, you're just having an anxiety attack. You're good. And I was like, I'm not good though. Like I'm not okay.
Right.
And they were just like, sorry, we can't give you anything. And nobody ever gave me a Xanax. It was just here's a bag of fluid. And it was a very expensive ER visit, but it's tough. There are good days and then there are bad days, and they do happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So for you, with any students that, I mean, you left teaching when this happened, so you might not have, did you ever have students that had anxiety that you knew that that's what it was and you just hadn't experienced it yourself?
I don't remember any of my students specifically having diagnosed anxiety that was written into their IEPs, but I will say that before I was diagnosed myself, I was not aware of the extent of what anxiety does or can do to a person. I knew of it because, even 5 years ago when I was, diagnosed with severe anxiety, nobody was really talking about it. Right. And I won't even lie. I'm very open about my journey with anxiety. I went and got diagnosed, went out on FMLA, waited for my FMLA to kick in for my district to let me out of my contract. And I hid it from everyone except for my husband, obviously, that I had anxiety. I didn't tell anybody. And I was like, if I just don't tell anybody, it'll go away. Like, no big deal. Once I'm out of that toxic situation, my anxiety is just going to go away and I'm going to be good and we're going to be good. And I wasn't good. I just kind of hid it and prolonged it until almost a year later. My husband took me on a trip because my birthday's in January. So he took us on a trip for my birthday, and I had a panic attack in the hotel room. And in a time when I should have been just really happy, and I was so happy to be there. I enjoyed the trip, but one of my memories now is just having a panic attack in that hotel room. And he was like, you need to go to therapy. Like you need to call your doctor and get an appointment. So I actually scheduled an appointment on my phone from that hotel room to get an appointment with my primary care doctor to go see her when we got back. And that was when I first, she was like, because when I first got diagnosed, she's like, you need to go to therapy and here's your medication. And I was like, it's going to go away. Right. I get out of the classroom. Like, I didn't know, I was just like, hey, no big deal. So I didn't do anything. I wish that I had, like, had I known what I know now, I would have gone and I would have done all the things. So it wasn't until a year later that I started therapy, and I have been diagnosed with severe anxiety. I have been given medication. I took it once and I threw it up, and I kind of took that as a sign for me that God was just like, just go to therapy and see what happens. I'm not against it. If I ever had somebody given me a Xanax last year, I would have been on it. Like I have not needed it personally for myself yet, not opposed to it. But therapy really has just been a saving grace in my life. And I think have been in therapy like 3 out of the last 5 years off and on. So it truly saved me, I feel like, from my anxiety.
Yeah. And I'm so appreciative of your comment that you really had no idea how pervasive anxiety can be in a person's life until you experienced it yourself. Yeah. And I feel like, I guess because I've had it my whole life, just didn't know that's what it was growing up. But I did recognize some things in my students, and I realized, and I always used to love to study the brain. I still do. I'm fascinated by how the brain works and all, how everything works together and what happens when it doesn't work together. And so I was always advocating for my students, they're stressed when they go into this classroom. They're more relaxed when they're in my classroom because there's just not as much going on, and they know that they're accepted in my classroom. But I didn't know what to call it necessarily. But then trying to get other people to understand, well, I love that student. They're welcomed in my class. I'm like, but that's not how they feel.
Yeah.
Somehow you haven't expressed that to them in a way that they feel you're sincere when you say that. Or just the thing that has always baffled me is, as I said, I've been in very safe environments, and mine will start to hit me with that impending tragedy. When they really first started hitting me was when I would be up in the middle of the night with my newborn infant, just rocking her in the chair, quiet, peaceful, loving environment.
Yeah.
And I would start having the bad thing for, I think, a lot of people is the big ones can just come at you from nowhere.
Yeah.
And so there aren't really triggers necessarily. Like with some behaviors, you can kind of see it building.
For sure.
I couldn't always see that in my own.
I know for sure. Looking back, I see it. I can see it now. And I do have triggers, but So when I went to therapy, we did cognitive behavior therapy, which is amazing. Again, it changed the whole game for me. And so now it took me like 3 or 4 years to finally get to a place. And it wasn't just, and this goes for teachers listening too, where your example where you say, Stephanie doesn't feel welcome in your class. Well, I love having her in my class. It's not a one-time thing saying it either. For me, it was like 3 years of me constantly saying to myself. So I know, and it sounds crazy and I'm fully aware, I have 2 voices in my brain. I have my Stephanie voice, and then I have my anxiety voice, which I've named Dolores. I can differentiate between the 2 voices in my own head now, but I couldn't then. I didn't know when Dolores was saying something. I thought I was saying that to myself. And I feel like that's how a lot of our students feel because they don't know that as well. So when you say, I love having Stephanie in my class, it's great. Their Stephanie brain may know that, but their anxiety brain is making them think that you don't like having them there, or that they don't have any friends, or that they're not worth it. So it's more than just a one-time, I love having you here. It's really working on and making them feel safe and loved. And it's not just a one-time thing. It might take a couple of times for a student. It might take a couple of years. It has nothing against you as a person.
Right.
It's our anxiety brain, and it's really hard to flip that switch off unless you've had the therapy, the training to be able to do it yourself.
Right. Yeah. And that is such a great point. And I thank you for bringing that up, because that is certainly, I'm maybe going to name my anxiety voice as well now, because there is definitely a difference between the two. My anxiety voice does not deal in factual information.
No. Mine either.
It completely relies on irrational thoughts.
Yeah.
And to exactly what you said, when you have that student in your classroom who maybe because, they have gotten in trouble with you before, or maybe because they know that you have to do some things differently for them than what you do for somebody else in the class, or because they have to leave the class to go to whatever, they just automatically are getting those irrational thoughts of, you're a problem. This teacher doesn't like you because you're causing this teacher all this extra work and all this extra effort. And, you're a behavior problem and blah, 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 blah. And it's all that stuff. But until you can use the understanding that difference, that's such a great way to put it, that, and what 8-year-old, 5-year-old, 9-year-old, I mean, unfortunately, we have kids that young that struggle with anxiety.
Yeah.
And, and I think we need to do a better job overall in training all of our teachers.
Yeah.
Whether they're special ed, gen ed, therapists, specials teachers, whomever, about mental health. And then I don't know how you get buy-in necessarily and belief about those things with those teachers, because I do think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That unfortunately, I just think we're going to continue to fight these battles with our students who are struggling with anxiety or panic attacks or depression, and then there's, kind of the ones that aren't as prevalent. I almost said popular, aren't as prevalent, like your bipolar, your schizophrenia, your manic depressives, those sorts of things. And we have to, I feel we both left the classroom around the same time, about 5 or 6 years ago. But I feel that we have to work with the whole child. When you went into teaching, what did you think you were going to, what was your classroom going to look like? What were your students going to look like?
Yeah. So growing up, I was one of those people who always wanted to be a teacher. Like I was never going to be anything. There was a time where I wanted to be a nurse, but like, I don't like blood. So I was like, that's not for me. And then I wanted to be an architect for a while there, but I was like, I'm good. I want to be a teacher. So like, I've always wanted to do this. And one of the things that I really, in going through therapy after leaving the classroom, was me letting go of this thought in my mind of what my teaching journey was going to look like, because I thought I was going to teach in the same classroom for 35 years and retire, like all of the teachers that I went to school with did. Like the teachers, I grew up in a very small town in Pennsylvania. Most of the teachers are still there. They keep their job through retirement. They retire and that's it. Like there's not a lot of turnover there, which is great. But for my own perspective of things, like over 7.5 years, I've taught in 7 different schools, 4 different states. Like, wow, it's never been that one linear line. So for me, I had to let go of that thought of just like what teaching was going to be in just one classroom for the rest of your life. And you're going to be here. And I don't even know what I thought my kids were going to be like. And I don't even know my classroom. I just knew, I was like, yes, I have 4 walls. That is a classroom. That is what makes you a teacher. So for me, I had to let go of those because I'm still a teacher, even though I'm not in the traditional classroom setting, especially now with COVID. There's so many virtual teachers.
Right.
I love it. I'm here for it. Where was this like 5 years ago when I was struggling with this? No, just kidding. I don't wish COVID on anybody either. But I feel like we've come a long way, and I'm probably getting off tangent of your question, but I feel like we've come a long way in the last 5 years. We still have a really, really long way to go, but the conversation is starting, and I think that's a good thing for everyone, for kids and for teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just our students that are dealing with this anxiety, especially since the pandemic hit. I've heard so many teachers are facing it, and it's anxiety is different than burnout, but there's a lot of both happening. Yeah. And I think anxiety in general probably has increased exponentially. Yes. In the last few years because of so many things being out of everybody's control, or at least it seems like it's out of our control. And yeah, I mean, the conversations definitely need to happen. The professional developments definitely need to happen. The reason I asked the question of, who did you think or what did you think your classroom was going to look like is because I've often come across teachers who, gen ed teachers. Now, you were a special ed teacher, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So I found this more with gen ed teachers, but I have found this as well with special ed teachers, that they had inadvertently come up with an idea of what their classroom would run like.
Right.
Because they had this imaginary thought of, oh, okay, all the kids are going to be in their desks. They're going to be listening. They're going to be so engaged. They're going to be so excited because they're there and I'm their teacher. And it's just going to be this great and wonderful thing. And they're all just going to learn the way that I teach. And that's not reality.
I'm sure. I mean, yeah, I probably felt the same exact way.
And I don't have a problem with, I mean, I'm sure that that's how I thought too. My problem is once you hit reality and you don't change how you're doing things and you keep that vision that you didn't even know that you had. And you're like, well, no, I can't deal with, this kid who's laying upside down in their chair and this one who never sits and this one who talks all the time and this one who, is not engaged and these 12 who are kind of listening, but maybe not getting it all. And, I mean, our classrooms are big. They have lots of people in them and there's every single person is their own individual person, lots of personalities, lots of learning styles. So when you're working with teachers now, what sort of, and maybe you were doing this before, but what sort of advice or suggestions do you give them? And then also what sort of feedback are you getting from them?
Yeah. So, I love this conversation so much because I feel like, and this is a conversation I've had with other just teachers in general, special ed, gen ed, admin, I feel like a lot of our expectations as new teachers going into the classroom are based off of the style of classrooms we were in growing up. Now, again, coming from a small school, like we all listened. And if I didn't listen, I would go home and I was in trouble. Like I was in trouble.
Yep.
So that's just kind of, I don't want to say that's old school, but that's not how the world has evolved to today.
Right.
And I think that light bulb in my head went off when I first started teaching a self-contained classroom. So I did self-contained for about 2.5 years. And that's the setting that I left when I left the traditional classroom setting. The very first week that I was teaching that class, I had no experience teaching self-contained. Loved that class to pieces though, like best class ever. Let me just preface with that. The art facilitator. So in the state of Texas, they call it art facilitator. It's annual review and something. It's like the IEP case manager. Yeah. They run the meetings, the IEP meetings. So she comes in and she's like, "How was your day?" And I was like, "I haven't gotten lunch. Like I've been eating lunch with the kids every day." And she was like, No, you need to take a lunch. And then I was like, okay, well, and I was just telling her all the things and she was amazing. I cried when she left because she got a promotion to the district level. And I was like, oh, you can't leave me. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. When you get the good one, you don't want them to go.
My gosh. But she gave me the best advice. And this is the advice that I give to other teachers when they're teaching anything. One, the no 2 days are the same, and that's okay. Every day is a fresh start. But her advice to me was, as long as the kids get on the bus and make it to school, as long as they eat lunch and they get on the correct bus to go home at the end of the day, that is a successful day. It doesn't matter what you teach. It doesn't matter if you get all of your lessons done. It doesn't matter anything else. As long as they get to school, they eat lunch, and they get home on the right bus, that is a successful day. And I was like, all of that pressure of just everything, I don't want to say it fell off of my shoulders because I still felt it there.
Sure.
But I was just like, you're right. Like some days that is all we're going to get done. And that is okay because tomorrow is a brand new day and we'll try again tomorrow. So I try to share that advice as often as I can, especially with newer teachers, because that is really how it is teaching now. Like,
right.
That's what and there's nothing wrong with that. That's completely okay. But we can't allow that to, make us think like we're not meant for this or this isn't what we're supposed to be doing. We aren't trained for this. Like the traditional college training that we get is not set up to lead us to teach in today's classroom. Right. And a lot of the trainings, as a special ed teacher that we go to as special ed teachers are meant for gen ed kids.
Yep.
Like they're not made for us. So we really are on our own island, like all together. It's like a huge island of special ed teachers. Right. But that doesn't mean that we can't, like with social media now and just technology, you have your Facebook group. Like I have mine. Like there are ways to connect with other special ed teachers all over the country, all over the world.
Yeah.
To learn what we need to learn, to get the advice that we need to service and help our kids, which I think is fantastic. But don't let one bad day in the classroom make you think that you're a bad teacher.
Oh my gosh, no.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And necessarily not even a bad year.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
As a special ed teacher, and as a gen ed teacher too, there are options. If you go into like my first job, I was strictly resource. And so for anybody who's watching who doesn't necessarily know what we mean by self-contained and resource, I'll just give a quick definition. Self-contained is pretty much that they stay with a special education teacher all day long for their academics. They may or may not go out for, the specials and lunch and but they're pretty much, they are contained within the special education room. Resource, at least in my area, is, they stay more with their gen ed peers and they just either come in or I push in and they just get a little extra help from me, a little extra study time, a little extra skills practice, a little extra whatever.
Yeah.
And so the first year that I taught, I had K-8 resource at the whole building. And I thought I was doing okay. I had 20 kids, so I had 20 lessons for math, 20 lessons for English, 20 lessons for, social studies, because nobody was on the same level.
Right.
Even if they were in the same grade, they weren't in the same level.
Yeah.
And, so doing all of that stuff. And it was my first year, but I thought I did okay. Well, the administrator and I did not see eye to eye about what was okay. And so I left that district and I went to the next district and they said, okay, we have a resource room available and we have a self-contained room available. And I was like, I want to do the self-contained room. I want to try that because I've already done a year of resource and I'm not really sure that was my fit. I stayed, of course, I ended up being a combination of the two. Mm-hmm. I had some kids who were resource K4 and then I had K8 self-contained. And that was a great fit for me.
Yeah.
And I've known teachers who, I didn't think my first year was bad. I mean, my other teachers that I worked with were pleased, but if you go into teaching and maybe that first year, that's a tough year, especially if you've just started in the last 5 years. Yeah. It's been a lot tougher, so do absolutely don't think you're a bad teacher or that teaching's not for you. Try a different grade level, try a different type of classroom.
Maybe different school.
Really, right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so huge too. Maybe teaching really isn't for you, but don't cut it off after a couple of bad days or a couple bad months or even a bad year.
Yeah.
If your heart is really there, try a different something. Because that's so important. And we have to take care of ourselves and figure out what's best for us so that we can show that to our students, that we actually practice what we preach.
Yeah.
And so when you work with your teachers, what kind of things do you do with them with like the intentional IEP program?
Yeah. So with the intentional IEP, so there's two different ways to work with me inside of the intentional IEP. So the intentional IEP, there is a membership and it gives you access to trainings kind of like this. So one of your trainings that we filmed will be in the summer PD series. And then I think one is going to be in next school year. I haven't made that calendar yet, but it's coming out. But you'll get access to trainings like this. You'll be able to submit questions to me. You have the IEP Goal Bank, which you can search. And then I have intentional IEP writing, which is where you learn how to write an IEP. It's essentially the training for IEPs that we didn't get in college and the districts don't give us. So you have that option as well. And then when we open that up for everyone to join a couple times a year, we have live office hours. So you get to come and ask me IEP questions and all of those things. So I work with teachers in a lot of different ways. It really just depends on what you need. And for every teacher, that's different. It looks very different for every teacher, whether they're a first year teacher or a veteran teacher. I've worked with all of them. And, it really is just a spectrum of different needs when it comes to teachers as well.
Yeah. Do you ever have gen ed teachers who join just because they want to know more about the IEP?
I have asked, so people have asked me, gen ed teachers have asked me if this is for them. And I'm like, well, while this is for special ed specifically, because typically special ed teachers, we're the ones that write the IEP, right? Supposed to be a team effort. That's not what it looks like, unfortunately, everywhere. Best practice is for the team to write it together. But I'm always open to saying to gen ed teachers, like, you are a part of the team. And I think that's a whole other conversation. But gen ed teachers are very much needed on IEP teams. They are the grade level curriculum experts. And if they don't feel that way, if they're coming to your meetings and just sitting there like a bump on a log, they don't feel like they're needed there and they don't feel like experts. So that's just going to get off that pedestal for a second. But I commend any gen ed teacher who is like, I want to learn more about IEPs, whether they have one child with an IEP or 8 children with IEPs in their classroom. I welcome all of it because we are a team and we need to work together to provide this IEP and implement the IEP with fidelity for all of our students. Right. And if we're not all on the same page, we don't know what all the terms mean. We don't know how to do this or what to do that and what goes here. And it's just going to be a hot mess, which is, that is what it is.
Which I will say it's how most of our IEPs are and how they're implemented. It's a hot mess. It's very unfortunate. I mean, we spend so much time on putting this document together. And when I say we, yes, I do tend to mean mostly special ed teachers because as you said, in reality, we are the ones gathering the data mostly and putting all the pieces together, but it is supposed to be that there has been conversation.
Correct.
Whether that's all together at once, or whether that's, the special ed teacher and this gen ed teacher one day, and then this gen ed teacher another day, and then the related therapy personnel this day, and then we all come together and say, okay, now let's share all of this, together at this meeting with the parent involved, because the parent is supposed to be equal as well. And, let's all hash this all out and figure this all out. And, so we spend tons and tons of time and energy and effort in writing this document that some people don't understand it. Some people don't want to follow it. They don't have buy-in because they did sit at the meeting like a bump on the log. They didn't feel they were part of developing it. And I know for me in my trainings that I do, because I also work with teachers and I work with parents.
Yeah.
Is, like everybody needs to be part of this. This is in order for this to be a true functioning, beautiful team, everyone should be able to feel like they equally participated and that their input was validated. No, do you have to do everything that everyone suggests? Goodness gracious, no, because that's impossible. But to at least, say, what, that's a really good idea and that input is very valuable. What if we did it like this? If you can't do it the way they're suggesting, but I'm in so many meetings and I have been for years, and I probably led them as a special ed teacher where the gen ed teachers didn't get to say much.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to talk to them ahead of time. That didn't always work. And then, it was because I don't know about the ones that you've led, but ours were always like, you got to try to get, everything done in this amount of time, even though you really need this amount of time.
Yeah.
Speak 10 times faster than normal and skip over the non-important stuff, but that's kind of needed to know, but just don't really talk about that. And then, and like not everybody feels that they can share or ask questions. And I think, to be perfectly honest, again, going back to that training that we mentioned, that university training that our teachers are getting still, but have gotten. I mean, my training did not prepare me. I think I was prepared better than what I hear a lot of people are prepared now, but it still didn't cover everything as good as it could have, or maybe I didn't remember it all. But I mean, there's just so much. I think our gen ed teachers, those of us who went into special ed, we get so much training, and that's still not enough. But our gen ed teachers get such a tiny, tiny amount.
They get like a SPED 101 course, if anything.
Yeah.
That's not nearly enough.
No, because we're expecting them to work with any student that has been deemed their classroom is the least restrictive environment, that LRE that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
But we don't train them. And I think that's why a lot of gen ed teachers don't speak up, because I don't think they feel confident in themselves and their own knowledge. So again, we need to, and I've been talking to universities since I wrote my book, and I've gotten my book out there. I've been trying to at least get that in to give the gen ed teachers an idea of what families' lives are like.
Yeah.
But there's still, the whole training needs to be different.
Yeah.
It just, I mean, my husband and I just talked about this last night, like, why do we need to know about, spend, weeks and weeks on like William Shakespeare or,
why do I need to take a dance class in college when I'm not doing any dance? Why do I need an art history class?
Right.
Give me another special ed class. Give me a gen ed class.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, there are certainly things. Yeah, exactly what you said. Okay, do we really need to spend a whole semester on learning who developed this theory of development, and then why this theory of development differs from that one, and all that? I mean, okay, that's important, but a full semester when, like you said, we need to be talking about how do we work with the whole child?
Yeah.
How do we help the whole family? Because it's not just the child in the moment that they're in our classroom that has the disability.
Yeah.
It's every minute of every day, 24/7, 365, and it impacts the entire family. And I
just had a light bulb moment, actually, thinking about college training and the courses that I was sitting in. So you know how when we're training teachers, we're like, I'm not a lawyer. You're doing this on your own.
Right.
All the legal jargon that we have to say so that we are not held liable for team decisions all that stuff. I wonder if that's why colleges don't touch it. Because I don't know why that just came into my mind. And I was like, well, maybe that's why.
I just think, the wheels of education and the wheels of government turn very slowly.
Yeah.
And, you said you taught for 7.5 years. I was in education as either an aide or a substitute or a full-time teacher for about 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I am seeing today things that were done early on in my career that have been put up on the shelf as not working,
mm-hmm.
and then brought back and recycled a little bit and tweaked a little bit and then put back up on the shelf because they weren't working, and then brought back again. And it frustrates the heck out of me because we're so much about, well, the science says this, and we're supposed to use research-based, scientifically proven methods, but they don't stay scientifically proven. It's like, oh, well, it's proven for this one, but then it doesn't work for the next 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, one of my best friends is a reading specialist. So she teaches me about that whole aspect of teaching, but, the science of reading is new. Well, it's not new. It's been around for a while, but it is a buzz phrase. It's right. She's going through the trainings and all the things. And Lucy Calkins, I've seen her in the news. Her article's been shared all over Facebook groups and social media the last week. And I feel like that's a good example of I wonder, and I guess this is a rhetorical question, but also for you in just terms of like, what do you think? I feel like a lot of the gurus, I use that term lightly, gurus, and I'm not saying not being in the classroom is not a good thing, because I'm not in the classroom. I would certainly never tell a teacher right now how to teach in a pandemic classroom.
Right.
But
Same.
They've been withdrawn from teaching for so long, or they've never actually taught in a physical classroom for any amount of time, and are recommending things to teachers that just aren't working. And just the system doesn't listen to we know we're not respected, but the system doesn't listen to teachers anyway. I feel like a lot of the problems in education could be mitigated if teachers had a voice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I just made a comment recently, and the person was like, oh my gosh, that is so true. And I don't remember exactly how I said it, but it was basically, if you don't suffer the repercussions of your decisions, you shouldn't make the decisions. So, basically like our legislators, we're making all these decisions, some of the administrators who are making these decisions about, well, we need to use this curriculum, or we need to use this product, or we need to use this program, but yet they're not the one dealing in it every single day, every minute of the day with the students. They're not, and there are great programs. There have been great programs for as long as education has been around. It's the problem that I have seen with a lot of programs is, if you can implement the program exactly the way that it was intended to be implemented, it will work. Mm-hmm. However, usually those are very controlled environments, when they're saying, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way. But in reality, that's not going to happen. Right.
Not now.
No, absolutely not now. But even before the pandemic, you've got assemblies, you've got fire drills, you've got kids sick, you've got distractions, you've got all these things that in that controlled environment, when they researched this, weren't happening. And even if all of that stuff was still the same, you still have 20 different personalities than the however many went through the research project.
Right. And most classrooms, SPED classrooms, don't have a curriculum.
Oh gosh, no. I was talking gen ed. Yeah.
No, but I mean, just the curriculum in and of itself is a huge issue within special ed.
Right. Yeah. Right. And again, for that, my sort of explanation, I guess, I don't want to say excuse or rationale, but I guess it's my explanation, is you can't really have a special ed curriculum, because then it's not special ed anymore. You have like your Orton Gillingham and your Wilsons and your Linda Mood Bell, and those are all the strategies
Right.
But I don't know that you could fully say, do this for every special ed child, because then it's, you're not individualizing it necessarily.
Well, and I think then what would come into play is teaching teachers, and I feel like teachers know how to adapt curriculum just innately. Like we just do it. Like you give us anything, like you give me this piece of paper and with a lesson plan on it, and I will teach this lesson to 8 different kids on 8 different grade levels with 8 different IEPs. Like we can just do it. But I think that when it comes down to it, a lot of teachers don't realize the things that they're doing are adaptations, and that's what they look like. And I think even just a college course or just a unit in a college course that is like, here are the 9 types of adaptations. Here's what they mean. Here's a lesson plan. Now I want you to adapt it for 4 different ones.
Right.
Like we never did that.
Yeah. I don't know if I did. It doesn't sound familiar, but I also went to college 100 years ago, so I can't guarantee that.
I mean, I feel like I went to college 100 years ago too at this point, but.
Yeah. And, you made a good point just then, and I'm going to tie that to a point you made earlier, is that our gen ed teachers are the curriculum experts for their subject or their grade level. We as special education teachers are the experts in accommodations, modifications, differentiating, and all those other things. Because of what you just said, for gen ed teachers, it does seem to be innate that they know whatever their topic is, whatever their grade level is. And for us, we just seem to have that gift of being able to see it in different ways and being able to present it in different ways. And the first time I ever had a school psychologist say, well, we want to keep the child in the gen ed room as much as possible because that teacher is the expert. And I was like, ouch, because I didn't get what she was saying at first. But then I was like, oh, well, yeah, because that person has taught 4th grade social studies for 20 years. And if I did the social studies lesson, I'd have to read it. I'd have to figure it all out. I'd have to, so no, I'm not an expert in that, but it's the expert in the differentiating and reaching the student in a different way. Yeah. That's my strength. And so it took me, I had to go, ow, okay, I'll take that knife out. But, oh, right. No, it really wasn't a knife after all. It really was, true words that needed to be spoken. Yeah. So yeah. Well, so we have talked about a lot of things, and oh my gosh, I have forgotten to put up. I had your website up. Oh, so, it's completely okay. Make sure, if you want to check her, and you have the cutest data collection and stickers. Oh, and thanks. I'm sending people to your store all the time. Oh, all the teachers. I'm like, you need data collection? You go talk to Mrs. Deesman. She has it. I can tell you how to use it, but you've developed cute products, beautiful products, efficient products. So definitely check her out. And then I also wanted to let everybody know that next week, Monday, it is Monday, not Tuesday, that, and I know that's Memorial Day Monday, and I've double checked that and triple checked that with Dr. Grandin, that she's like, okay, doing it on Monday, Memorial Day. Front door. What? She will be on with me next Monday at 1:00, but it's Monday, not Tuesday. So yes,
I'm so envious.
I am so excited. Yeah. I'll tell you the story offline, but of how that all came to be. But yes, if you are in the world of autism at all, you have probably heard Dr. Temple Grandin's name. She is in her 70s now, and she grew up at a time when there wasn't special education law. And just her life is just amazing. And she can tell you what it's like to live with autism. And a lot of people aren't able to verbalize that so that other people can understand it. And so she will be on next Monday. So I wanted to pop that up, and then put your website. Whoops, where'd it go? I had your website there. I didn't realize it was up, and I made it disappear. Good. But so we have talked about limits placed on teachers, and that really even wasn't what I was thinking about would happen today. But I thank you so much for kind of veering off and going down that path with me. Thank you for sharing about your anxiety struggles, because I feel those myself. And I appreciate your honesty. And yeah, make sure, guys, if you don't already follow Mrs. D's Corner, she's on Instagram, she's on Facebook. Where else are you?
Everywhere. Wait, hold on. I take that back. I'm not on Twitter and I'm not on TikTok. I could draw the line there.
I'm like, okay, well, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. I'm like, Pinterest. See, I'm not on Pinterest. I'm afraid to get on Pinterest because I would be stuck there looking at everybody else's cool stuff.
You fall down a lot of rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I imagine is what TikTok is, but I don't know. I haven't ventured there yet. I'm not ready for it yet.
Yeah, I do the Instagram Reels, and I'm happy with those. But yeah, I haven't moved over to the TikTok either. But yeah, it's one of those things. So I get to see you in a couple months, right?
Yes, in Milwaukee.
Yay! And I'm not going with you, but what are you doing on Friday night?
We're going to see the Backstreet Boys.
Once you follow her, you will realize how in love with them she is. But I'll just tell you right now, she is.
I love them.
She's really like best friends with them. I'll let her tell you that story. Yeah, she's tight with that.
We are. They're my boys. Oh man.
So thank you. We are both master IEP coaches. We are both former former traditional in the classroom special education teachers. We both love to help our teachers and love to help do you work with families or do you just work with teachers?
I just work with teachers. Now, if a family is like, ask me simple questions, I will help them out. But if they're looking for a specialist, like I posted in the Master IEP Coach Network a couple of weeks ago about a parent reached out looking for a dyslexia specialist. I was like, that's not me. Let me find you somebody who is. Right. So I will be that connection for parents and families if they need something beyond like, how do I get the team to send me a draft IEP? I'm like, I got you. But like other things, like, it's not my area of expertise. So I will pass that to someone else.
All right. Yeah. So if you're interested in her summer PD series, let me know. We will be sure to put the link in this chat box so that you can access that. And that's going on all summer?
It is. So it started yesterday. And then the last one, it's 10 weeks. So starting this week, it's 10 weeks. And we'll skip July 4th week. And then it goes till like almost the end of July. But again, nothing is live. So you have access for a whole year. So you can watch them whenever you want.
Yeah, and super reasonable priced for the fact that you have all these different people who have come on, and the early bird part is over, but even the regular price is still amazing. So
so it's $147, say $50, and you get bonus access to last year's trainings as well. So you really get, I think it's 59 total guest speaker trainings for $147.
Yeah. That's ridiculously amazing. I mean, where else are you going to get that many different people speaking on that many different subjects from that many different perspectives? And yeah, that's just awesome. So Stephanie, thank you so much for being with me today. And is there one last thing that you want to say before we wrap up, or are we good?
No, well, just thank you so much. And I think just the biggest takeaway is this is, do what's best for you, regardless of what anyone else says. And if that's staying in the classroom, moving to a different classroom, leaving the classroom for a couple of years, going to work for an ed tech company, starting your own teacherpreneur company or whatever that may be, that's all right. Do what makes you happy, because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You can't help other people if you don't help yourself first.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. All right. Well, as I said, next week, Monday, 1:00, join me here, same place. And Dr. Temple Grandin will be my guest. And I'm so excited for that. Stephanie, again, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple months.
Yes, I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, parents and teachers, are you tired of IEP meetings that feel like a battle? Let's put an end to the tension and create a collaborative, calm, and respectful environment together. Shelley Keno, your go-to IEP consultant, can transform your meetings into positive and productive experiences. With Shelley Keno, your child is her top priority, your voice is heard, and you become confident. Shelley Keno is making the world better for all, one IEP at a time. Visit www.shelleykeno.com for more information and set up your free 20-minute consultation today. That's shelleykeno.com, SHELLEYKENOW.